Oh, Yamaha, what are we gonna do with you? While so many of your bikes titillate the throttle hands of fast boys around the globe, a lot of motorcycles in your lineup are starting to look a little long in the tooth. We've got no more R6, the MT-07 is getting squeezed out by every other middleweight twin in the class, and frankly, the R3 is like a decade behind many entry-level sport bikes these days. But that wasn't always the case. The R3 used to be one of the heavy hitters in the beginner bike class. Granted, it was up against bikes like the Gixxer 250, the Ninja 250, and the Ninja 300 back in the day, but the R3 was even the motorcycle I started on that got me hooked on riding back in 2015. But let's be honest, I haven't even had an R3 as a giveaway bike since 2019, and in that time, I've had 2 Harley-Davidson Sportsters, if you can believe it. I mean, yeah, we've had a handful of MT-03s, but let's not split hairs here. My point being, the beginner sport bike category is rapidly changing, and Yamaha better catch up. So let's talk about it on today's episode of Team Yamaha Blue, Yammy Noob. Let's get into it.
Look, you know it, I know it knows it. It's the coolest leader bike in the entire world. It's the Yamaha R1M, and I'm giving one away for free over on yammynoob.co. Yes, this motorcycle right here is gonna end up on one of your driveways watching right now. Head over to the store and anything you buy will get you entries to win this incredible R1M. Do not miss your chance to own one of the coolest Japanese leader bikes of all time.
The Yamaha R3 was first released in 2015. This bike built up the racing pedigree of Yamaha's R line of motorcycles, creating a motorcycle that had style and appeal of a fully fledged race bike that was approachable for beginner riders. At the time of its initial release, the R3 was competing with motorcycles like the Ninja 300 from Kawasaki, the CBR 300R from Honda, and the RC390 from KTM. Shoulder to shoulder with any of these bikes, the R3 was pretty comparable at the time. It had an extra cylinder over the CBR on the RC390, which allowed it to rev higher, lending itself to an authentic sport bike experience. The R3 was almost leading the class in terms of displacement, without the 373cc thumper found in the RC390. It uses a 321cc parallel twin engine that makes 42 horsepower and 22 foot-pounds of torque. It received an update in 2019 that made improvements to the suspension and riding position and changed the overall look and feel of the bike as well. The conventional fork on the first generation was swapped for an upside-down unit from KYB, and the clip-ons were moved 22mm lower, lending itself to a more aggressive ergonomics package. Another big change was they swapped from those god-awful bias-ply tires that the first generation came with to normal tires. It was a nice improvement. Although the R3 makes no mistakes about its purpose as an approachable and practical beginner bike, despite its aggressive aerodynamic styling and rev-happy engine, the R3 is a confidence-inspiring ride. It has a seat height just shy of 31 inches and weighs 375 pounds ready to ride. The nearly perfect weight distribution between front and rear make it quick and nimble around tight corners, and as a result, it isn't unheard of for people who started an R3 to ultimately move on to a larger street bike and turn their R3 into a dedicated track machine used to hone their skills on the racetrack. Although I will be perfectly honest, the R3 isn't quite as good as a Ninja 400 nowadays as a track machine, but back then, compared to the Ninja 300, it was really good. As a beginner bike that has seen negligible updates over the last 8 years, the R3 is not equipped with the most tech available, though the 2019 model saw a fully upgraded digital LCD dash, doing away with the split analog tach found in the first generation, which I actually really liked. I like that little kind of hexagonal tachometer, it's pretty cool. The R3 also comes with LED lighting front and rear and ABS as standard. That is a price of $5,500. Additionally, as is the industry standard, Yamaha also utilizes the chassis and engine from the R3 in their beginner naked offering, the MT-03, which offers the same approachable power plant in a more relaxed upright riding position and a much cheaper price. At the time of its release in 2015, which was 8 years ago now, the Yamaha R3 was running alongside the aforementioned Kawasaki Ninja 300, which served as the stepping stone in Kawasaki's development between the long-standing 250 and the current 400. At that time, the R3 Ninja 300 were pretty neck and neck, though Yamaha had a little more power on tap thanks to the extra 25 cubes of displacement above the Ninja's 296cc twin. The two were only evenly matched for 3 short years before Kawasaki launched the Ninja 400 in 2018, which we all now know is the goated beginner bike. The Ninja 400 upped the ante not just for the 300 sport bike class, but even larger middleweight sport bikes like the Honda CBR 500R, which got put on notice, where the Ninja proved that the minuscule horsepower advantage the CBR had was negligible when it weighs 50 pounds more. The Ninja 400 uses a 399cc parallel twin twin that makes 45 horsepower at 10,000 RPM. The larger displacement provides more torque as well, the Ninja making 28 foot-pounds, outperforming every 300 class bike in the category. The Ninja 400, as I said, in many ways became the new gold standard for entry-level sport bikes, offering approachable power and stature with enough juice on tap to keep a rider entertained as they continue to grow and develop their skills, and it's really good on track, bone stock. Despite being pretty uncontested for offering the beginner sport bike of choice, Kawasaki hasn't slowed their roll. They've recently unveiled their plans for a Ninja 500 model in 2024. Whereas the Ninja 500R was a middleweight sport bike sold by Kawasaki in the 90s and early 2000s, Kawasaki has repurposed the moniker for the newest addition to the Ninja series. The new Ninja 500 repurposes a lot of the same materials found in the Ninja 400, including the frame and suspension. The most notable difference is the implementation of the new 451cc engine developed by Kawasaki for their use in their new Eliminator 450 Cruiser, so truthfully, the Ninja 500 would be more accurately described as a Ninja 450, but in the race against obsolescence, they needed the extra gumption to not be overshadowed by the new 450 sport bikes that have come to market. The engine used in the Ninja 500 is a modification of the previous platform, increasing the stroke while retaining the original bore, which should have a greater impact on the torque figures of this machine than peak power. This engine will also be used in the Z500 naked bike, just like the previous Z400 that was available. To stay competitive, the Ninja 500 and Z500 will use a full-color TFT dash as well. At this rate, the Ninja 650 should be put out of a job by other bikes in its own bloodline in a few years, but that wouldn't be unwarranted, as it is already the least appealing 650 currently available. But that is subject for a whole other video. It's also worth noting that Kawasaki's release of the ZX4RR, which is their high-revving, small-displacement 4-cylinder sport bike for die-hard sport bike track day enthusiasts. While the price point at which it is offered and the impractical nature of the power delivery don't make it a direct competitor to true beginner sport bikes, it is indicative of Kawasaki's investment in relevancy and excitable motorcycles. But it must be said, the Ninja 500 will be heavier and won't rev as hard as the Ninja 400, so I feel it's quite a bit of a step backwards for Kawasaki. But they are limited by the A2 licensing requirements for the EU market. They can't build a bike with more power because they're literally not allowed to. Much of the push for Kawasaki to develop the Ninja 500 and ultimately for Yamaha to update the R3 is stemming from CF Moto's new 450 SS. The Minnesota headquartered and Chinese manufactured CF Moto has been gradually eking out their niche in the motorcycle market here in the US over the last few years. Faced with many disadvantages that come with competing against the big four, such as questions of reliability, lack of brand awareness, and being the subject of questionable political discourse, CF Moto has had to bring a highly competitive package to each segment, offering either more power, more features, more tech, or any combination of the three at a price noticeably cheaper than the competition. The situation's not entirely dissimilar to Honda and subsequently the rest of the big four, edging out the previously loved homegrown brands such as Triumph and Harley-Davidson in the late 60s and 70s by offering more competitive motorcycles at a better price, just 30 years after Japan was in Axis power during World War II. That must have been a big hurdle to clear. To deny that CF Moto is in some degree a harbinger of changing tides of global motorcycle manufacturing would be incredibly short-sighted. A highly competitive motorcycle currently being offered at CF Moto is the 450 SS. This bike is directly related to the subject at hand as it casts a very large shadow over the Yamaha R3 in just about every way aside from the name on the badging. This motorcycle is a fully fared sport bike designed for beginner riders looking for the most bang for their buck. The 450 SS is a 450cc parallel twin engine that uses a 270-degree crank, which lends itself to behaving more akin to traditional V-twin engines than a normal 180-degree parallel twin. The use of this engine design is an engine this small is unique to CF Moto. The 270 crank has become quite popular in middleweight bike, but is yet to be distilled down to the small displacement category, so this is a first. The power plant is able to put down 50 horsepower and 29 foot-pounds of torque. As a result, it is making more peak power than any beginner sport bike made by the Big Four, although will ultimately making less torque than the Ninja 450 upon its debut. We did a whole review of the Ninja 400 versus the CF Moto 450 SS, you can go and check that out, but from a stoplight, they're functionally identical in terms of acceleration, although both of them would leave an R3 for dead, which is what we're talking about today. The 450 SS is right on the money for size as well, with a 31-inch seat height and 370-pound curb weight. It's a fully modern machine from design and engine down to the tech package. It uses LED lighting all around and has some higher-end design features like aerodynamic winglets, even though it doesn't really go that fast to need them. There's a TFT display with Bluetooth connectivity and Continental ABS. A feature that really shows CF Moto's putting their money where their mouth is the inclusion of a Brembo brake caliper up at the front, a feature that you would typically be hard-pressed to find on a bike that's sold at this price point, which the 450 SS is offered. This bike has an MSRP of $5,699, which you can then start seeing the R3 as not really that great value for money, as you can get all this for an extra $199. Yeah. In the wake of the modernization of the beginner sport bike, even the racing greats at Aprilia have announced a new small displacement bike, the RS 457. After the triumph of the RS 660, a mid-sized parallel twin motorcycle perfectly balancing sporty track performance with street riding friendliness and maneuverability, Aprilia now ventures into the novice sport bike segment with the RS 457. Powered by a 457cc parallel twin engine, boasting a claimed 47 horsepower, the RS 457 incorporates fully adjustable suspension with a 41mm upside-down fork in the front. The suspension is complemented by bi-bree brakes, the budget-friendly choice from Brembo commonly seen on entry-level motorcycles. But don't forget, the 450SS from CF Moto got the real deal. Inheriting technology from its larger counterparts, the RS 457 comes equipped with advanced features. Despite the modest 47 horsepower, it includes 3 ride modes that modify traction control and power delivery while maintaining the top horsepower, which you don't really need on a bike that makes this little horsepower. With a claimed dry weight of 350 pounds, the RS 457, even with essential fluids and fuel, won't be lighter than other small displacement sport bikes, most of which come with a lower price tag. The RS 457 appears to align more with bikes like the ZX4RR, targeting track day and racing enthusiasts rather than the average beginner rider. Nevertheless, it provides an enticing option for newer riders who want an exhilarating Italian machine over the typical Japanese entry sport bike option, or a Chinese sport bike for that matter. Since we last spoke of the RS 457, pricing in the US seems to be confirmed, starting at $6,799. So, as you can see, Yamaha and the R3 will have their work cut out for them to stay relevant in a rapidly changing beginner bike ecosystem. Sure, they'll never be dwarfed by Honda or Suzuki in the beginner sport bike realm, but we don't expect anything different from those companies. Yamaha has racing pedigree and a reputation for excellence when it comes to athletic motorcycles, and their offerings have dwindled a little bit over the years. They seem to have focused more on the MT brands of bikes, but it would be excellent to see an upgrade to the R3, an R4, an R5, an R4.5, who knows? But with how quickly KTM updates their bikes, not to mention their relationship with CF Moto, it's only a matter of time before they start dropping new beginner bikes to keep up with Kawasaki. And if Yamaha doesn't follow suit, the R3 may soon face a fate similar to that of the Gixxer 250, woefully out of date and woefully behind the competition. I personally think Yamaha is in a perfect position to create a motorcycle that's way higher revving and exciting than any of the 500 class bikes that are currently out on the market. I think they also should provide a cross-plane twin because that's what CF Moto is doing, and it's proved to be very, very popular. They already have the technology with the MT-07, so maybe they could just shrink that motorcycle down, maybe change the bore and stroke on that current platform and put it into something like the R3. In essence, Yamaha could somehow make a baby R7, and I think that would work really, really well. Make a very racy-oriented option that revs higher than anybody else, and I think that would be a big winner. Fact. In the 19th century, a bizarre fashion trend known as the crinoline mania saw women wearing large bell-shaped cages under their skirts to achieve an exaggerated shape. These skirts were such a hazard, thousands of women died from them accidentally catching on fire after bumping into an open flame. Goodbye.
I love being here inside of the warm embryonic fluid of Valentino Rossi. Me and him just sharing foods together. Maybe he's going to eat some pizza or some pasta here in the hills of Tavullia. But you know where else it's nice and warm and cozy is this next episode of Yami Noob you can click on right over here. I'd love for you to watch it. But anyways, I'm going to stay here hanging out. Me and him might go onto the track later, but I'll catch you guys later.